To start the meeting without them? Join in. We should be arriving, I would say, in the next 5 minutes. Shall I start the recording? I guess so.
Recording in progress.
Okay, I'm going to call the closed session of the Board of Directors meeting of the Monroe Peninsula Water Management District on September 16th, 2024. Calling closed session to order. What did I say? It's still going to be a roll call. Yes. Whatever months we're sitting here. Director Oglesby? Here. Director Eisenhart? Here. Director Edwards? Here. Vice Chair Riley? Here. Chair Anderson? I'm here. Directors Paul and Adams are en route and should be arriving shortly.
If you have the minutes reflect that director-elect is also present.
Yeah.
We haven't adjourned to closed session yet, so we can just proceed.
Well, we didn't say the comment about acknowledging her. So she's not on the board to acknowledge yet. That's the first thing. But then you have to go to public comment.
And then we have to go into closed session.
Okay, so additions or corrections? Public comment on the closed session agenda?
There will be one on the open session.
Okay. So we are going into closed session then. Okay. Chair Anderson, if you give me a few minutes, I will lock the meeting. It is 6:10 and we're opening the board meeting of the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District on Monday, December 16th. I keep trying to make it September. It's December 16th. We've just finished our closed session and can we have roll call, please? Yes, Director Oglesby? Here. Director Adams? Here. Director Paul? Here. Director Lindor? Here. Director Edwards? Here. Vice Chair Riley?
Here.
Chair Anderson? Here. All members are present. Can we join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now it is my pleasure to introduce our new board member, Rebecca Lindor. It's nice to have you on the board.
I'm pleased to be here, anxious to get to work.
Great. Well, we have that for you.
No, I'm not prepared to give a quick, I don't do anything quick, so. But no, I ran against an opponent on a very short campaign and with the help of many people, including my predecessor, Mark Eisenhart, won the election and am ready to go.
Great. All right, great.
Welcome.
Welcome. Do we have any additions and corrections?
There's one correction. The staff note for item 22 is inadvertently a duplicate of that for item 9.
Mhm.
So you should have a revision in your folder and the public can view the corrected memorandum for our staff report for item 22
It is on the web.
on the web.
Yes.
Is the same as 9?
Right now it is in the original
Okay.
packet.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, is anybody here or listening to this meeting wants to address the board on items that are not on the agenda? Information items, closed session items, matters not listed, can do so at this time during oral communication. And please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to speak?
Thank you. Rebecca Lindor, I want to say how proud I am of you for standing up and running and committing to this 4-year term. I'm so grateful that you did that. And I have some advice for you. These other board members, you need to be very careful. And I begin with Director Edwards. He's very shy and soft-spoken. He needs a lot of prodding to get him to participate. Many times he'll say something you can't even hear. So watch out for that. Director Paul is pushy. She's in flight and she will be, thank you, she will do anything she can to have her way. So you keep an eye on her.
I think I'll take that as a compliment.
Wait a minute, there's more. Director Riley, nicest guy, but doesn't know a lot about water issues, local politics. He's sort of not in the know about that. Chair Anderson, don't get too close to her when she's got that gavel in her hand. And Director Adams, unfortunately, she's the nice one and she's leaving after this meeting, so we don't know what's gonna happen. And finally, as I know you've already figured out, Director Oglesby, he's very short. Be careful, you might start tripping over him if you get too close. Obviously, I jest. This is quite a group. You will have a blast. You will learn a lot from them. They are all wise and wonderful people. And then there's the staff. incredible. I can't wait to watch you get to know everybody that participates in these meetings and the people that you interact with. I have 1:07. Wow, I'm done early. That's all I had to say. Welcome.
Could you leave your name, sir? We want to know who's speaking so we can watch out.
Mark Allen Eisenhart Esquire.
Thank you, sir.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Yes, Chair Anderson, I have Michael Bear. Michael, when you're ready.
Good day, everybody. Good evening. I'm sorry I've been away for quite a while, but glad you're all here. Glad we got rain. And as you guys transition to the next year of leadership, I would say, I was trying to get on, and here it is, 5 minutes after 6, and it just says you're locked out. It would sure be nice if you could come up with a little note that says, the closed meeting is still happening. I imagine you might lose people. Say, I can't get in. I'm locked out. It's 9 minutes after 6. And they feel locked out. So if someone can make an adjustment on that, and hopefully that time won't. Anyway, so very quickly, I have to thank all the transition. Mark, I saw you there. Thank you for your service for those 4 years. It was great to get to know you, and you did some fine work. And Rebecca, welcome aboard in his stead. Look forward to getting to know you. Amy, this is your last meeting at the top, I think, if I recall how this works.
Oh.
Thank you for your year of service at the chair. And George, you're coming on board, so back into leadership after all these years of following along. I remember back in the day, you led us all into this mess back in like 2015 and 2018. So good luck in the year ahead, and just finally, Mary. Are you there? Oh, there you are, Mary. It's been a long time, and you've done so much service for this community and for this group. And I'm not going to be around if there's going to be something at the end. So this is my last time to see you in this official position, and I just have to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all your years of service.
Thank you.
Now, I don't see a clock, but hopefully none of that counted. I do have some questions. One of the things we learned when George was leading us way back in the day is that discovery in the eminent domain case, discovery happens after the bench trial. Discovery happens at the second trial. And yet after the judges, quashing the demurs, I started hearing everybody talking about discovery was like coming up next. So I'm looking for some clarification if that is indeed what's happening. And if indeed that is what is happening, I have a couple of questions. So about the cost, the CalAm submits quarterly reports to the Public Utilities Commission about the water supply project, and they currently list expenses in excess of $225 million. And my understanding is it includes the Monterey pipeline, that's $50 million, which has been completed. So I'm not arguing about that. What I remember from way back then is the test slant well was supposed to be $4 million and jumped up to $5 million. I remember reading that headline in the Herald many years ago. Now they list intake water at $29 million spent so far. So my question is, where did all the money go? How did they get to $225 million? More than 50% of a project that hasn't essentially broken ground yet. And they are quarterly reporting to the PUC, and it goes up by increments every quarter. And the PUC isn't asking, I'm asking, can you discover what happened to the other $175 million? That's a question I really want to know. And then the second thing, so that's one question. I don't see a clock. I have no idea how much time I have, but I'll be quick and I'm almost done. There's the second thing, which is thank God for the rainy season. Really looking forward to hear if we're doing ARS yet or how close that is. And also want to hear what is the plan to make sure that CalAm, this is the time of year CalAm should be drawing those 3,300 acre feet from the river when the river is flowing, not be taking it from Monterey One or any other source. When the river's flowing, that's when you get it. So I see my name's up there and I'll say farewell. Those are my two questions. I hope to hear from staff on the later today on that. Thank you.
Hello? Okay, wasn't sure, everything went black. Hi, Melody Chrislock. The sound on everybody's mic is a bit garbled, especially Dave's mic. You might want to check that. So I wanted to point out something because of the state lands meeting. I put together a chart from your water data, and I added something to that chart that I took from water bills. And we all know that from 2004, in the last 20 years, our demand has dropped from 15,000 acre feet to under 9,000. But I don't know if many people realize the impact of cost and why that has happened. But I thought I would alert you to the fact that in 2008, 5,000 gallons, I should say, the Office of Ratepayers Advocates says that the typical water use on the Monterey Peninsula is between 5,000 and 6,000 gallons a month. Not what CalAm claims. The average includes all the empty homes on the peninsula. That's why it's so low. But the average use is actually 5,000 to 6,000. And the cost of 5,000 gallons a month of water in 2008 was $44. Today, it is $180 in 20 years. And even in 2017, it was only $100 for 5,000 gallons. So it's gone up almost double since 2017. Thus, the incredible drop in demand. I wish CalAm could get clear on this. There's no way people are ever going to use 5,000 to 6,000 more acre feet of water from this desal plant. It's too expensive. It's not going to happen. But for some weird reason, CalAm can't seem to understand supply and demand, that if you raise the cost of things, demand drops. Anyway, thank you so much. And I'll miss you, Mark. And welcome, Rebecca. Thanks.
Your question was raised earlier. Sounds projecting at ASR yet. We've not had enough rain. We're not spilling. I think the level at the dam is at 1,031 feet, and we need about another 9 feet to spill. And then, of course, you need the watershed itself to kind of absorb rain. So this rain's serving a purpose to kind of prime the watershed, but we'll need a few more inches before we're going to meet the in-stream flow requirements and be able to divert. So that takes care of ASR. So we need the other.
Just the ones.
Yeah, the other presentation. And then the team is ready. The ASR team is ready to go. So they've all prepped. They've had their first coordinating meetings already. And so just whenever we meet those in-stream flow requirements, we should be good to go. So on the question earlier about we should be going and getting the river, I think CalAM's doing a very good job of from the river, which you'll see in the quarterly numbers here. Not quite a quarter, but first 2 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next slide. storage and recovery. So we're highly confident in those numbers, but we said, hey, we don't know for sure. Let's hold back 1,000 acre feet as a factor of safety, leaving us 59 acre feet of surplus based on that long list of supplies on the very first page. So at that AMBAG growth rate of 41.6 acre feet per year average growth on our estimation, you would have 37 years worth of water with just this set of supplies. But what if we're wrong? What if the community grows 3 times faster than the AMBAG growth rate? Then you've got about 12 years. So either way you look at it, whether you believe a desal plant is not needed, which would be the first case, or not needed now, or it is needed, might be needed in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. We have at least 12 years. So Pure Water Monterey expansion, even with the factor of safety, is a bridge to desal, or it's a solution in and of itself. We want to get to the point where we can lift the CDO and see how this community can grow when water is not the obstacle. So that'll be what we'll be bringing to the state board. Next slide. And the story is simple. 4 years without trespass, multiple years of new supply with no future trespass in sight, and Cal-Am's continued effort to get a long-term drought-proof supply still exists out there. So you can view this project as a bridge to that future, or as I mentioned, a future in and of itself. Next slide. So our schedule, the game plan is January, February, informal meetings with the State Water Resources Control Board to kind of go through the same general discussion. March, April, fingers crossed. We're hoping to get a proposed decision in the phase 2 of the proceeding on supply and demand. Seemingly possible. They just extended the statutory deadline to June 30th. The State Lands Commission said, hopefully we will be in a position to have a hearing after we hear back from the Public Utilities Commission. So obviously those two state agencies are talking to each other. And they said perhaps May for a public hearing, which would imply maybe we see a decision in March, April. If we do, that'll inform the more formal filing or petition for modification that we will do for the State Water Board, which would hopefully be ready to go in May. And then May to November would be time to let the State Board run its process. Chances are it could take longer, but the Pure Water project is supposed to come online in roughly October, November. And then shortly thereafter, if we're successful with the State Water Board, then we would encourage Cal-Am to file a Tier 1 advice letter to lift the moratorium. The only way we are going to get large-scale housing projects and large-scale economic drivers for job growth will be lifting the moratorium. So it's a folly to say that here's this new water that's coming online and allocating it to the jurisdictions and leaving it unusable essentially for large scale projects. So I think, our hope is with that May application that we will bring that hand in hand with letters of support from city councils and from community groups, both housing advocates as well as job advocates. And stay tuned for now. That looks like the schedule, and we'll see how we can stick to it.
I have 2 questions. Jim, it sounds like this track to lift the CDO is designed to permanently lift the CDO. I thought there was a discussion a few months ago that there might be a wiggle room in to have a temporary lift and not have to go through the full process in order to finally lift it. And I didn't know whether the short version of my time track is even in play anymore or not.
Yeah, I've been approached by a couple of mayors to try to get an interim solution. You have to keep in mind, we tried an interim solution specifically for housing and even willing to do it only for affordable housing, which was more of what I would call selective non-enforcement of condition 2 of the cease and desist order. And that felt pretty flat. At that July forum that Senator Laird facilitated, I think the message was pretty clear that the State Water Board would prefer us to resolve the problem on a permanent basis. That doesn't mean that the CDO itself would go entirely away. They may want to take the guardrails away so that the moratorium could be lifted and growth can happen, but reporting would still need to happen. So we don't know what form it's going to take. But the important thing for us is getting those guardrails removed. And that is tantamount to it's a modification to the existing cease and desist order rather than a complete removal.
And it is consistent with the discussions from July in the Laird stakeholders meeting. Okay, thank you. I may.
Okay, I have, yes, thank you. I don't suppose the State Water Board has provided a definition of permanent water supply?
Well, so the words are replacement water supply, and no, they've not. So that's where on the surface of things, you'd say, look, we're not in trespass. So the tool, the enforcement mechanism, CDO, is geared towards if you're in violation. But they've strongly signaled they don't want to take the guardrails away and then see us back in a short period of time, which is why they've said they really don't want to be the agency that has to resolve the numbers. So they prefer something substantive coming out of the Public Utilities Commission. But B, that there's a sufficient supply. And that's where, I try to draw the line to, well, right now it's looking like somewhere between 12 and 37 years. That ought to count for something. But I've been doing a lot of research just trying to find examples of cease and desist orders that were resolved based on demonstration of an adequate supply and what that might mean. I don't really want to go down the path of trying to put together a class action suit where the first member of the class alleges a regulatory taking, and you would know that there's probably 100 others right behind them with the same taking. But that is also a possibility.
I just comment on that. Likely what they meant is a relatively long-term solution.
Yeah.
Because there is no such thing as permanent with certainty, especially with climate change, but even without that, and no resources inexhaustible or permanent, not even desal, because the wells only last 25 years and have to be replaced, and their sea level rise. And I mean, every solution may end up not being permanent, but I think they must have meant that we don't want to be back in the same situation 3-4 years from now and having to start all over again. Thank you.
Yeah, Jim, first, if we're going to agendize this in the future, could we put removal of the CDO or something like you got on front? Let everybody know that we're going to push forward. I believe right now, do the CDO have anything to do with supply? We're waiting on that.
Right. You need to think of them as two separate items. Where we've gotten to is we have a new supply coming online that's may not be permanent, but it's a long lead time. It's a long runway, and it really will provide a supply in excess of demand, which only exacerbates or it extends its benefit, because if you're putting surplus water into the ground because you don't have a use for it, you're actually increasing your stored water, which makes the benefit of that new pure water expansion, not just what comes in the current year, but what comes in the current year and what you stored from the prior year. And so for a number of years, you're going to be storing water. And so demonstrating that there's a sufficient supply to have enough lead time that in California, if it takes 10 years to build a project, you want longer than a 10-year lead time with the amount of supply that you have. If that future supply is a CalAmD cell project, well, then half the work's been done on environmental and permitting and design. So it's not even a 10-year process. But you look at the 20 conditions from the Coastal Commission and probably a handful of others that have not even been addressed that are likely to need to be addressed at the Public Utilities Commission. It's at least a 2 to 3 year project to just meet the hurdles, and then another 2.5 years to build it. So you're not going to see a desal plant in 5 or 6 years. So the State Water Board needs to be convinced that you don't have to wait for that project to demonstrate a replacement supply, that there's enough of this water to bridge to that point or to carry you even further. And if we get a favorable proposed decision from the PUC that lines up more with the 5 intervening parties who all kind of agreed on what the future water supply looks like, then it makes that discussion easier. But right now, I think we're trying to say, look at reason. There's no legal underpinnings any longer to keep the CDO in place.
And that's my point. We're waiting on the CP. I don't want to see us waiting on the CPUC, and they're going to be like, I heard at State Lands Commission, April, they want to have their hearing about those, about the pumping.
Yep.
Out of that. But now I heard that the CPUC judge want to wait till June until he rendered his decision. Now, removing the CDO shouldn't have nothing to do with those two things. So we should push on and you know, I know, give you a little bit of time.
Well, that's why we're up there in January.
Okay, give you a little time to talk to the cities, but we need to know where they're gonna go. If they don't wanna go with us, we need to go it alone and get this done. So I'd just like to keep updated. Thank you for giving us at least a timeline on what you're thinking. Thank you.
Just picking up the thread where Director Edwards made it. You don't want to go, you don't want to be too far in front of the city. You know, and I know he didn't mean it that way, but I'm saying we would like to take the city with us. I think that was, if you're going up there, you go with the city. I think Director Paul made a good point about the length of the desal itself, right? How long, we're talking about permanency, right? There's no permanent water supply in the city, right? And so after a while, desal has to be replaced, right? So when we're talking about 37 years, then we have a good number. And I like where you went back to the bridge. Remember, that's where we started. This is whatever may be decided, we're trying to get you to the other side. We're not making that decision once we get to the other side, but can this bridge, and if the bridge is viable, then why are we being penalized? Right? Besides, we're not taking anymore, we're not trespassing. But they're deciding desal or not desal. That's not us, right? This bridge can get you 37 years or 12. And so I said all that to get to my question. Has the AMBAG's growth rate ever been that far off? You know, you may not know now, but I think that's a good answer to have when you go to the state, which is if AMBAG's growth rate has not been off in decades, then our number is close to 37, right? And so if that's a true number, then it's hard for me to see why that's not quite a bit of permanency, if that makes sense. You know, we can go with, hey, if it's 3 times as much, then we'll get you 12. Well, but if AMBAG ain't been wrong in 3 decades, or how many cycles of growth rate, then our numbers are pretty solid. And that takes us as close to 37 as you get.
That's a really good question. And I'm stricken by another one. When I came to present to City of Seaside, your city council member, who is your representative on AMBAG, said, hey, wait, I sit with AMBAG and I've got strong confidence in what we do, AMBAG does. And I heard that in more than one city council meeting. So,
No, I
Yeah.
mean, they're pretty good. And I'm just saying, let's use their, the state confidence in that number, which everybody accepts at a certain rate.
Yeah.
If we go back and really check it, it's been pretty spot on, then 37 is pretty spot on. 35, 37.
Any other?
I have a little bit of a follow-up, I think. We're out on the plank by ourselves. Now, not without the cities, I don't mean that, but just in the advocacy that we're promoting to get rid of the CDO. CalAm has never partnered with us to try to make that happen. So what concerns me is that the Hospitality Association or the Chamber, I'm not sure which organization it was, but maybe both, sent us a letter saying that they want to eliminate the CDO and they support everything going forward into the CDO as long as there's a desal plant. Now, my kind of question is, and I'm looking at Tom as well. And then I'm going to go back to Michael Bear's comments early on at the very beginning. If CalAm already says that it has spent over $200 million of the 370 or whatever it is now, and there's nothing in the ground, there's no final permit, there's a lot more construction to be done, and CalAm has made no attempt, as far as I know, to update their numbers. I don't know how old their original estimate was for building the CDO. I'm sorry, building the desal plant. But from my memory, it's 2, 3, 4 years old.
It's a lot longer.
And has not been updated since then. So everybody who wants to refer to the CalAm's number of the cost for desal must appreciate at some point or understand this number is old and dated and all sorts of inflationary activities have taken place since then. And those numbers are phony. And I don't know if the public understands that. And I don't know that we're the ones that ought to be spinning that out there because we're trying to be good neighbors with CalAm as well as everybody else. But it's a phony message to the public to think that more than half the money has already been spent, CalAm has said is available or they're expected to spend on this project. And it's going to be an enormous surprise when the new numbers come out. And I'm sure they'll come out when, our process moves forward, somewhere in that process. It'll probably come out. But I'm just hoping that CalAm can be a little more honest with whatever the basis of the discussion is, because they're telling the community, yeah, we're $200 million away now for a desal, and that's probably not even half of what that number is going to be. It may be 3 times that, 4 times that in the long run. And I just think the public is being led down a primrose path here. That's going to be a shock when the numbers come out. That's just a comment.
I think that's a very good point.
Sure. One question. I don't know if you need the answer now, but is there a way to quantify, that $200 million? What is that in a project? Is that 20%? Right? But we know nothing's in the ground, right? So is that 20%? Is that 10%? Is that 80%? But they should be able to tell us, hey, well, that's 80%, because then you can evaluate, you can judge on what's the cost of the remaining percentage, right? Because it's hard to say we spent close to half of 10%.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's public knowledge or I'm sure experts can tell you when you spend $20 million, you should get a certain junction.
Yeah, just on this topic, and I don't want to drag this meeting too far, but the last time numbers were estimated was late 2017, and that's what carried into the 2018 decision. And I'll get this wrong, but call it 329 million. In the decision in 2018, it said you have a cost cap with no play in it. Originally, the request was for some play that you wouldn't have to come back, and then it was established at a fixed number. And if that cost cap is going to be exceeded, the company has to do what's called a petition for modification of the decision. That has not started. It's not even been drafted. The costs were updated in 2019 based on the Trump Tax Act, so different federal income tax rates, and the assumption that all of the debt would qualify for state revolving fund monies, which is very, very low cost debt. Due to inactivity, the state has taken the project off of the qualified list for 100% of the debt piece. So it's currently not on that list, and it's unclear whether there's sufficient state revolving fund money to do it at this point. So that has to get resolved. But the California Construction Cost Index has gone up over 44% since the last time the construction cost numbers were run. So clearly there's going to be a significant increase in construction costs. What's in that memorandum account, or the reported, four pieces of the total budget, are a number of things: design, permitting, legal, the cost of the Coastal Commission lawsuit, the cost of all the proceedings. There are things called common actuals. A portion that was deducted or reduced for the extraction wells because they were being carried as ASR wells that were now being replaced with extraction wells. So a piece of it's going to get into the rate base. And the plant itself is being phased in two pieces, with the first phase being slightly smaller, which could reduce costs. But the footprint of the slant wells is being redesigned. And so there's some increase in costs. But these common actuals include things too, like an engineer in San Diego who's assigned to the project. His salary, his benefits, proportionate benefits, are what's called capitalized. Instead of being an operating cost, it's a capital cost. It's part of the project. So there's a bunch of that kind of stuff in there. If he makes a visit to Monterey and spends a night in a hotel and has a meal, those expenses are also capitalized to the project. But we really won't know what any of those numbers look like. I like your reaction. Until somebody does another thorough analysis of, here's what it's going to look like, here's what it's going to cost.
Just one final comment. I'm not asking for action. I just want to call attention to this, but I also think the business community in general should be kept informed of this issue, and somehow just say, don't close your eyes, because you'll be surprised when the numbers come out. That's just what I'm guessing.
But just not to cut you off, but we need to find a way to do it. We represent the ratepayers. We, the board, represent the ratepayers. So if we can figure out something, if we can get some kind of number, we need to tell them. If we're waiting on Cal-Am to do it, I'm sorry, it ain't gonna come as fast as we think. So start thinking about a way, General Manager.
Yeah, good.
Well, I would think that there are some numbers that have got to be available pretty soon, because they're talking about putting in the wells, replacing the slant wells, and having to, if Marine Coast agrees, having to expand the outfall. There's projects that are being talked about right now, and I don't know if ASR 1 and 2 have to do with that cost, if they would be important in that. But
Madam Chair, can you just make sure that your microphone is on?
oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. So it seems like those numbers, have got to be thought about right now since they're trying to do it.
All right.
Anybody else?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay,
Madam Chair, looks like you have a member of the public.
Yes.
yes, Mr. Raleigh.
Sure. I've heard Mr. Stoltz's presentation about 5 times now. My name's Tom Raleigh. I'm a Realtor, Century 21. I heard it as to the Board of Realtors, to our local government relations committee. I heard it to the Chamber of Commerce. We had quite a few politicians there. Mayor Carmel, the outgoing Mayor Carmel was there, and some other folks. And I think that the point that the mayor made about getting ahead of where you're at as far as demand. He's given you 10 years, and we've got some major projects that he has refused to add footnotes that these projects are coming online in the next couple of years. We have a major apartment complex of 60-some units on Garden Road coming online this year. There's a couple other major projects, a couple hotels coming online on the peninsula, 3 of them. These are not cranked into the demand figures. I also found out, talking to the head of hospitality, that the projection for this coming year is still only going to be 70% approximate of what we had pre-pandemic. So most of these years, recent years, are low demand because we have been way down. Hey, the major industry of the peninsula is tourism. And we've been way down in the number of tourists that have been coming to the peninsula. So not footnoting what the projected demand that's increasing. This is a major flaw in this. So yeah, Dreamland, it looks real good in the figures he's got, but he hasn't gone far enough. So I'm cautioning you guys, you nailed it. You represent the ratepayers. Somebody needs to be asking tough questions of Mr. Stoltz. What's the demand coming up in the future? If you don't take that into account when you come up with a nonsensical conclusion. Now, it would be great to go off the CDO. We'd all love it. We need it. It's held back businesses, new businesses, expansion of old businesses for years in Monterey. And I can tell you, Monterey is not happy with AMBAG's figures. The AMBAG rep, our rep, voted against what they came up with for the housing analysis study. So, while AMBAG's been very lucky in the past, but we've been under water restrictions ever since I've been in real estate, since the late 80s, since this gentleman was the government affairs director way back then. So we've been on some kind of water restrictions, holding back economic development all that time. So you need projections to have come up with reasonable conclusions. And while it'd be nice to go off of the CBO, if you don't have reasonable connections, they're gonna nail you.
Thank you, Mr. Raleigh.
Thank you.
Chair Anderson, I do have Michael Bear, and I just want to remind the board to make sure your mics are on, please. Mr. Bear, when you're ready.
Hi. There was a little trouble for part of Mr. Stoltz's first part of his presentation, but anyway, don't want to talk about that. I had one quick question, but I did want
Mr.
to.
Bear, did you have wanted to address the board?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I've unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
And water you could permit.
I have unmuted myself. Can you hear me? You cannot hear me?
We talk about when we do allocation.
I can hear you, Michael.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Bear.
Okay, so as far as Mr. Raleigh, I just want to say, can you get on the same side as the water board and say, let's do everything
No, he's not muted.
together? CDO, you can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Is it better? Can you hear me
Yeah,
now?
you were on the attendees list and you just,
Crashing on me.
yeah, and I've got two people texting me saying that there's no sound and occasionally no picture.
Oh,
Okay,
That happened at Seaside City Council too. No.
can you hear me? Can someone answer? You can't hear me?
Something else.
Does the call-in work?
Well,
the phone number,
Oh,
to call
the phone.
in, yeah. No, that's a good idea. I don't know if anybody.
Oh.
Yeah.
So one of our viewers says that she can hear Michael, but we can't hear Michael.
Oh.
So, there's only so much time that we can spend waiting, so sorry, Michael, and anyone else who wants to speak, but we will move on with our agenda.
Madam Chair, that does-
Report from the district council.
thank you. So we do have Dave Loretto here, but before we allow him to speak, I just want to report out on closed session items. The board did meet this evening for one item. This was the general manager's performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957. The full board was present, including Director-elect at the time, Rebecca Lindor. And that discussion involved the process regarding the performance evaluation. The general manager's performance evaluation will be coming back to the board in another closed session at a future date. That concludes my report.
Thank you.
And Director Eisenhart was there as well because he was still the seated director.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how it happened, but I just want to acknowledge that they both were in there.
Correct. The full board was present and Director-elect Rebecca Lindor was in the audience as a member of the participating.
Yep, we're ready for you.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, members of the public, and staff as well. My name is David Loretto. By way of introduction to your newest director, Linda, I was general counsel until earlier this year, and I'm working in the office with Michael Loretto. I'm continuing my efforts on behalf of the Water Management District, not as general counsel, but as special counsel, particularly on matters of litigation or administrative hearings. And the board has directed that because of the number of matters of pending litigation, that it would like to have an open report on matters of pending litigation to keep the board and the public informed as to what's going on. So at page 37 of your board packet is my general report of litigation. And you should keep in mind, and the public should be aware, that this is a public report. There are no confidential matters in here. These are matters that when from time to time, you need to go into closed session to discuss this and provide direction on that. This is not a month that we need that direction. It's but the board and by way of explanation to the public, the board did not feel comfortable with only getting periodic closed session matters discussed and wanted to have a more of a public review of that. And so what we have devised is this general report, and you'll note that there are highlighted provisions because on these cases, not everything changes on a month-to-month time step. So what I've tried to do here is to use highlighting to let you know and the public know what is different from the last time we reviewed this, because sometimes some of the verbiage is the same as you've had before. So going into this then, the first collection of cases are those by the Monterey Municipal Taxpayers Association, or MPTA, and the MPTA has made 6 different challenges to the district against its collection of the water supply charge. The first matter was resolved in the district's favor. That is long since passed. The second challenge is the one that was recently resolved in Superior Court before Judge Panetta, and that was resolved in favor of the MPTA. That case was challenged to the 6th District Court of Appeal, and the district did not prevail. The final decision, MPTA's decision, was affirmed by the appellate court. And so that matter has been remanded back to the trial court. The other 4 cases have, by agreement of the parties, have trailed until we would figure out what is happening with MPTA 2. That case has landed back in the trial court. We have reached a stipulation with the petitioners in that matter, MPTA, to try to postpone and resolve all pending litigation. So we have reached an agreement that there should not be any active litigation. The matter should not go back to Judge Panetta until we make a good faith attempt to settle the case. So the district is represented in terms of the trial by Michael Colantuno and Matthew Slentz. And the MPTA is represented by attorneys Eric Bennett and Prescott Littlefield. Negotiations as to a means to settle all of these cases are underway. Certainly it's been slowed down through the Thanksgiving holiday and now through the Christmas holiday. I anticipate that we will have reached a point that we have brought those negotiations as far as we can at the time of your January board meeting. So we are doing that in consultation with your general manager and having serial discussions with the opposing counsel. And we'll see if we have an agreement that can be reached. Now, it's a little more complicated than just the issues that were in the trial because of the other 4 cases, and we're trying to wrap it all up. And we have to discuss how much is owed in terms of attorney's fees and how much of any refund would be due to those who paid connection charges. I'm sorry, not connection charges, water supply charges. So this is just a status report. I anticipate that there will be a closed session in January when we have a refined settlement concept for you to review. I'll take any questions, or do you want me just to keep on going and then we'll take questions at the end?
Well, if people have questions, they can ask them now so we don't lose track, but please keep going unless you're interrupted.
So the next matter is the district's efforts to fulfill its mandate to the electorate in terms of Measure J, the acquisition of California American Water Company by eminent domain. Judge Vanessa Vallarta remains the presiding judge in that case. There was a case management conference in mid-November, and at that time, she confirmed that CalAm had a requirement to answer by December 16th. CalAm could have demurred, they chose not to. So just last week, CalAm did file their answer in that case. So that now triggers the next steps of that case in terms of discovery. The next step before the court is the case management hearing has been set for March 4th. The judge did ask that the parties get together and give more of a roadmap, a larger roadmap in terms of what are the key steps before the court that we see. It's very likely that there's going to be a mini trial or a motion by CalAm because CalAm is contesting that the district has not fulfilled its responsibilities to be able to go forward. The CalAm is certainly asserting that there's a requirement for the LAFCO and that is a critical defect. The district has enunciated its position that is not a requirement of law, that the district has provided potable water service on a retail level and in such a fashion that LAFCO does not have a mandatory role in this. So I'm anticipating that by the time of the March case management conference, we will have a very clear picture as to when those issues will come to the court. I anticipate that those will come sometime in the latter half of 2025. In the meantime, discovery is ongoing. Mr. Stolt had his deposition taken, and that was by Cal-Am. And I believe the purpose of that was to have the district's position be known in such a manner that it could be presented to a judge in support of Cal-Am's motion. So it's a work in progress, but there's going to be a lot of action stuff occurring in January and February, leading up to the next case management conference. The other matter is the district's lawsuit against LAFCO and how LAFCO conducted the administrative decisions in the district's request that LAFCO recognize the district's power to acquire the Cal-Am water system. That matter is on appeal before the 6th District Court of Appeals. Cal-Am is and LAFCO are first up. They have a requirement to file an opening brief because they are the appellants, and they asked for a 45-day extension of time. That request was made of the court, and the court granted that. So their brief is now due on January 20th. Once they file their brief, then it will be the district's turn to file a response. So it's matters before the appellate court, crying very slowly. So it's an exercise in hurry up and wait. Another matter of pending litigation is back in the Superior Court, and that's the challenges that have been made to the Coastal Commission's grant of the coastal development permit to Cal-Am for its desal plant. The litigants that are aligned with the district are City of Marina, Marina Coast Water District, the Marina Coast Water District, Groundwater Sustainability Agency, and of course the Water Management District. These agencies are collectively challenging the Coastal Commission's actions on that. There were hearings before Judge Wills on December 9th, and we were in trial all day. We did not get as far as the judge had anticipated when he set this for the one-day hearing, and once that first day of hearing ended, a second day of hearing was set, but that's not until January 6th, I believe. Monday, the 6th or the 9th. It's the 6th. Yes. And so that I anticipate that will be at least a half-day hearing, probably a full-day hearing. I would be very, very surprised if the judge allowed that to go beyond that. The judge is very engaged in terms of asking questions. He's very familiar with the record. I think he has done his homework in terms of understanding the law. He had excellent questions, and I can't tell you exactly how he's going to come down on matters. It's just a guess. But so that's in progress. We have several administrative hearing matters before the Public Utilities Commission. There are matters that have not changed since the last report in terms of Cal-Am's amended water purchase agreement. That's the one that's going to take a look at the phases that would be needed to update water supply and water demand calculations, and there hasn't been any action on that. The statutory deadline has been extended by the commission, and there's been no action since the last report. Similarly, the Public Utilities Commission has a pending matter on the acquisition rulemaking, and that by order of September 12th, the commission extended the statutory deadline to March 30th, and there's not been any further action in that matter.
Excuse me, maybe you should, could you explain for people who don't know aren't familiar with that rulemaking, what the acquisition rulemaking is about?
That is a Public Utilities Commission proceeding that affects statewide public utility commissions, but it does have particular impact on the CalAM system. And it talks about the extent to which public utilities can acquire small systems and add it to their rate base. And at the moment, when, for instance, when CalAM chooses to do that, the interests of the local ratepayer are not given much credence whatsoever, and therefore the effect of these rules and how it's treated will affect the costs of ratepayers.
Thank you.
The other matter that we've been involved in now since 2022 has been the CalAM's general rate case. General rate cases happen on a throughout the CalAM system, and it's on a triennial basis, on a 3-year basis. So the current rate case was filed in 2022, and the 3-year rate cycle would provide rates for years 24, 25, and 26. We do not, the administrative law judge in that matter, ALJ Rambo, did conduct the proceedings. He issued a proposed decision, and what you have at page 37 of your board packet, on the 3rd page of that memo, goes into some detail about the proposed decision. I'm not going to go into that detail at this time because last week, CalAM, I'm sorry, I'm back up for a moment. The judge issued a proposed decision in August. And there were then settlement discussions, and then the matter came to the commission to vote on December 5. And it appeared as though we were going to have a proposed decision.
You mean if
CalAM on December 12th
final
filed
decision?
an application for rehearing that will need to be heard by the commission and a request for additional oral argument. So it's premature for us to discuss what's in the proposed decision until we find out whether the application for rehearing will be heard and whether or not there will be additional oral argument.
It did get through final decision, so there was a proposed final decision that was issued, then the application for a rehearing.
And that decision was not pulled by any commissioner at the December 15th.
Okay, so the commission voted out a decision based on the ALJ, the administrative law judge's proposed decision, and then CalAM filed an application for rehearing, which is like a administrative appeal.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's as soon as we know whether or not that has been granted or denied, then we will issue a revised opinion that goes into greater detail in terms of the actual decision. And I know it's taken us 3 years to get here practically. CalAM's on track to file their next general rate case. And that application is due on July 1. And just so you know, this is a treasure trove for us and the public to find out how CalAM is running its business. Because we can ask questions and CalAM can be compelled to answer. And Mr. Baer was talking about in terms of discovery. Judicial discovery is a very expensive way to proceed by comparison to the discovery before the Public Utilities Commission. So this is our avenue to better understand CalAM's plans, CalAM's operations, and how it affects this community and the water supply system. The one other matter that I wanted to focus on is the last matter in my memo, and that's the case of the Water Management District versus the State Water Resources Control Board, and in particular, the intervener, the CR Club. This case was filed in 2009. The case and it had to do with the cease and desist order. The case was transferred from Monterey to Santa Clara County. It was appealed to the 6th District Court of Appeal, and that appeal then returned it to the trial court in 2014. During that process, Cal-Am had made a motion for attorney's fees. The district did oppose the attorney's fee motion.
Not Cal-Am,
I'm sorry?
Sierra Club?
Sierra Club.
Excuse me, Sierra Club. And
What is it?
the case has been dormant, but as we know, the cease and desist order still exists. The case still exists. And it hasn't been, there's been no motion to dismiss it whatsoever. Sierra Club's argument in favor of them being reimbursed attorney's fees is not right until the case is final. They received an email from the Sierra Club attorney, Larry Silver, in July, asking if the district had an interest in settling the attorney's fees. I expressed some concern that this had laid dormant for so long that we need to have a better understanding as to what's the basis for his assertion. And at the moment, we have no agreement with the Sierra Club that attorney's fees are owed. He said that he would get back to me, and this lay fallow for a period of time. I received another contact from the Sierra Club after Thanksgiving, once again wanting to renew this discussion. I explained to him that I would be happy to hear what his concerns were and find what was the amount of his demand. In 2012, Sierra Club was asking for a total of a little over $250,000 for fees. As I mentioned, the district did timely file an opposition to the Sierra Club motion, and that's where that stands at the moment. The Sierra Club's representative did promise that he would get more information as to how much and why they should be paid. I let him know that there wasn't enough time to get it on this meeting, and that he wanted us to have a serious review of it. The earliest that we could do that would be at the meeting in January, and that would be a closed session review. That's where this lies at the moment. I just need to comment that the Sierra Club's request of the district is but the tip of the iceberg. If fees are owed, the lion's share would be fees owed by Cal-Am against the Sierra Club. So we would need to understand the magnitude of their request for that as well. And our position in this lawsuit, we're aligned with Cal-Am, and because we were contesting the state board actions. So this is just letting you know that that claim is out there. From my perspective, it's not yet right. And we need a lot more information before we can actually sit down and talk about the details.
Well, can we talk about dismissing it? Can we dismiss, ask the court to dismiss?
We could not dismiss it by and of ourselves.
Okay.
Because the Cal-Am is party to that. And we could move for dismissal, but then that becomes a contested matter.
Okay, we'll talk about it in January. Thank you.
Yeah. That concludes my review, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Sounds like it's not ripe and stale at the same time.
Yes. Honestly, I think Mr. Silver is cleaning up his files in anticipation of retirement, and I think that is the reason that it has come forward. That's totally my speculation. We'll find out more when we get there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Laredo, getting rid of the ramp charges, that won't be effective until since they asked for a rehearing. I heard rumors that the ramp charges were,
Oh, yeah. The revenue adjustment mechanism.
yeah,
I believe that may be a major reason for CalAm's request for rehearing, but that's speculation.
okay, so they gotta do the rehearing if they're gonna approve what they approved.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
If a rehearing is not granted, then the decision that was voted upon by the commission will stand. And then we can get into those details on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Did you a good?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I want to see if the board has any appetite for hearing item 11 off the action items ahead of the public hearings. It's the only item we have presenters who we've brought in from elsewhere now.
Oh,
I see there's people with public comment from elsewhere, but from our side, it's the only one where we've asked presenters to come in.
okay, so
Let's jump ahead.
Chair Anderson, I do see Michael Bear's hand raised. I can try to see if he can connect.
I'll be quick. Can you hear me now?
Presenters a courtesy of.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Great.
as far as item 11, I think have the agreement of the board that we should move it up for the people who are here.
Through the chair, for the public, and I believe we're paying these people, is that correct? So that's a good reason to move them up, not just because they've been waiting. The public is waiting, but this is the ratepayers' dime, so.
That too, yes. Thank you.
Do we want to try to communicate with Michael Bear one more time? Or just move to the next item?
No, move to item 11, move that up.
Yeah, if we can hear him. So that's fine too. What I'm understanding through the background is they can now hear us, they can hear each other, but we cannot hear the speaker.
The speakers.
Yeah.
So if you want to allow him to talk now, if he wants to talk now. But if we can't hear him, of course, we're gonna go ahead.
He could call in. Yeah. Would be another.
So he could call in.
The phone number.
I think-
Agenda packet. Mr. Bear, can you hear us?
I can
Would
hear
you
you
like to speak
fine.
to the board?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? All right, I guess it doesn't work. I will try calling in.
Can you hear him?
you.
No, okay. We need to move forward.
Yeah.
Sorry that we're having problems with the system tonight. Okay, so Michelle.
Wait a minute to.
Just wait for the board clerk to bring the presentation on.
Goodness. It's huge.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Chair, members of the board and public. And thank you to the general manager for proposing to bring this item forward. I'm sure our auditors here would appreciate it. So this item before you is to receive the fiscal year 23-24 annual comprehensive financial report, or ACFR. If some of you may recall, the 23-24 annual report was presented to the board in February of this year. We are bringing this item earlier this time in December, thanks to everyone involved. So I'll go over the first part of the presentation, which goes over the financials, and then I'm going to hand it over to the auditors to go over the next part.
Excuse me, is there any way you can stop the feedback? I don't know if you're hearing it.
Yeah, I am hearing you. I'm not sure if it's if the mic's too close to me or.
Try that. Thank you. That's much better.
No worries.
Wasn't hearing.
Right, so for those who might be hearing this for the first time, what's an ACFR? An ACFR is a set of financial statements that includes accompanying notes and other information that complies with the accounting requirements of the Government Accounting Standards Board, or GASB, as it's called. GASB makes annual pronouncements, which are called statements, and they keep refining the standards for accounting and financial reporting every year. So GASB also provides the standards for the content of the ACFR, and every year our finances are audited by an independent CPA firm. So the ACFR has three sections. The first one is the introductory section, which provides an overview of the district through the letter of the transmittal, and then it provides the org structure. The second section, called the financial section, has the auditor's opinion, management discussion and analysis, then the basic financial statements, followed by notes and required supplementary information. And then the statistical section has demographic trends, financial trends, and other information that provides good historical context. I'll also add that in section 2, there are two sets of financial statements that are provided. The government fund financial statements have a short-term view, and they provide the operating picture by fund. And then there's the government-wide financial statements, which provide more of a consolidated picture of the district finances, and they include assets and long-term liabilities. And then in the notes, there are additional disclosures that are made in terms of some of the litigation and other contingent liabilities that the district might be exposed to. Oops. Sorry, one slide back. So the district's financial statements have been audited by Clifton Larson Allen. They are a certified CPA firm. The auditor provides two different set of opinions. One's on the financial statements, and the other is on internal controls. So the auditor has issued an unmodified opinion on the district's financial statements, which means that the statements are fairly presented in conformity with the generally accepted accounting principles of GAAP. And then their opinion also says that there aren't any material weaknesses in internal controls over financial reporting. The district did receive a certificate of excellence in financial reporting for the year before, 22-23, which is included in the ACFR package. So I'm just going to briefly go over the financials. These are the audited financials, and we will start off with the government fund. This is a statement of revenues and expenses. If you look at the 2024 revenues were 31.5 million, which is about 12% higher than last year. And that's a number of factors. One is we just sold more water compared to last year. Second, we also had slightly higher revenues for property taxes and user fees. And then our investment revenues were also substantially higher compared to the year before. So that the net change in fund balances is a positive 4.4 million. And that was budgeted for the assigned reserves that the district had. This is a balance sheet of the government funds. Again, you can see the assets, the 36.3 million. The assets are higher from last year, and I think this includes about 5.6 million of receivables. But again, if you subtract the liabilities out, the total fund balance stands at 26.1 million. This is a statement of net position, which is the government-wide statement. So there are two separate columns. First shows the governmental activities, and those are the activities that we directly engage in. And then the business tab activities, those are the activities associated with the Pebble Beach reclamation project that we have. That's being treated as an enterprise fund, and so both these are combined together. And the total net position on the bottom right is 75.3 million. It's 10% increase from last fiscal year. So governmental activities, so this includes all our capital facilities and other like long-term assets. That's why the assets here are higher than what you saw in the slide. And then business side activity, those assets are amortized water rights that the district has. And so together, we are in a positive net position of 75. This is just a very, very high level overview of our revenues. Water sales, as you can see here, were 42% of our total revenues, followed by user fees at 22%, water supply charge 11%, and property taxes 9%. And then switching over to expenditures on the next slide, water facilities were almost half of our expenditures. Project expenditures were again 25% of our total expenses, followed by personnel at 17% and operating expenditures and then professional fees at 4%. And this is just our pension and healthcare liability combined. Our end of year pension liability stands at around 7.6 million. There's a 7% increase from last fiscal year. Our OPEB, or healthcare liability, had a 4% increase. That stands at 5.2 million. And together, both the liabilities are 12.2. And now we come to the next part of the presentation, and then we can open it up to questions.
Good evening, I'm Rachel Barty with CLA, and I'll be brief as well, since we've already taken up a lot of time on the agenda. Do you have the slide presentation? Okay.
Excuse me.
Here to present the results of the audit for the fiscal year June 30, 2024. A very brief agenda, which Michelle's actually covered some of the items. The next slide. That he had brought up, we issued an unmodified opinion, or other words, used to be called a clean opinion. There were no qualifications to the opinion, which means that your financial statements in all material respects are in accordance with GAAP. So that's the best opinion that you can get. So this one, I keep forgetting that it goes really small when it's on your screen. We have a governance communication letter that's also in your board packet following the actual draft effort. And we're just required to disclose certain things to governance, make sure that you're aware of things. And this really is an overall purpose, is just to come to you after the planning of the audit and talk to somebody from governance, but now to say at the conclusion of the audit, what kind of things happened. So it's a follow-up. We didn't have any changes in the scope of the audit, so everything that how we planned the audit is how it went to fruition as far as our risks and planning. There are significant accounting policies that are described in the footnotes to the financial statements, and those are always in footnote 1. And there weren't really any significant changes to the footnotes this year as far as any retrospective review to make a determination if estimates aren't being accurate, and we would agree with the estimates that were there. We did not have any significant difficulties in performing the audit, and we also didn't have any disagreements with management or weren't aware of any consultations outside of our audit that were made with other CPAs. The bottom line for the audit, when you're looking at the financial statements, is there were no uncorrected misstatements that we found. We also, I'm gonna skip one bullet point, Nisha brought it up, we did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control that we would have to report to you. If we had, that would be in a separate communication. And at the end, the last piece from us is getting a management representation letter that Mr. Stoltz signs that has a lot of different representations on it, just about the exchange of information. The one change that I wanted to highlight was there were journal entries that were made as part of the audit. Some of them were prepared by Nisha after we got the trial balance. That's just a timing issue with staff turnover that happened right before the audit began, so we would expect those. We did have it, your net income on the governmental funds, so on the ones when you're actually seeing water supply, conservation, and mitigation, went down by 2.8 million from your internal financial statements. Primarily, and I wanted to explain this, by a journal entry that we had to make for 2.6 million to defer revenue. So in governmental accounting fund financial statements, if you have receivables, which you do, of 2.8 million related to some grant reimbursements and project reimbursements, if they're not collected within 60 days after your year end, they're considered unavailable and we have to defer the revenue. So it was correctly reported as an accurate receivable. You have substantiation to prove that you have those receivables, but you just got it late and you're not going to collect it yet. So that's the big swing. So if there was nothing that was signified an internal control deficiency or something wrong with the district's accounting, it's just that's why there's that near-term focus on the governmental statements, and also why the assets are so much higher and the net position is different when you look at the government-wide, because you do not defer it there. So there'll be a big revenue change between those two statements. Next slide. We normally go over, yep, no, you zoomed in, I think. Next slide. There's really not much on it. We just said there was one accounting pronouncement that was implemented this year. It was GASB statement number 100 for accounting changes and error corrections, and there was no impact. There's two pronouncements that are upcoming for the next fiscal year, one on compensated absences and one on certain risk disclosures. The one for compensated absences will need to be evaluated. And the next slide just shows you real briefly kind of some stuff on what is involved with that. It's an updated framework. It's going to go back to something that the district dealt with. I mean, I don't even know how long ago, maybe 15 years ago, where unused sick leave is going to have to be accrued on the financial statements again. It used to be only if it was paid at termination that it was accrued, and now that's going to possibly have to be reported. So we'll have to review the district's policies. We can assist with that if need be. If not, Nisha will need to look up the guidance in there on any changes for accounting for compensated absences. The next on certain risk disclosure, same thing. You know, that one's actually not applicable until next year as well. There's going to be mostly increased footnote disclosures, so we can review those requirements as needed. And so really at that point, we don't go over any of the financials in detail, but I do have them with me if you have any specific questions on any pages or footnotes, so we can go over them. Yes.
Thank you for your presentation. And I'm always curious if this is the norm, if most people get such a clean audit, or if we're doing really, really well, and it should be said.
It's both. And I was going to say that before we end, you know, that it has to do with when you talk, especially with having accounting turnover, Nishal and his diligence in getting us the accurate reports that we need to do the audit. So it's a mixture. We do have clients that we do find deficiencies in their accounting and in their reporting. Like I said, there was a little bit of a timing delay with the prepared by client entries, but that was it, just because of turnover and staff right before we were supposed to get the trial balance. But then he provided everything that we needed to conclude the audit.
Good. And then another question for you regarding the sick leave.
Yes.
And I'm unclear about this. So if in fact we only gave paid time off instead of delineating between vacation time and sick leave, would we have to do that?
I have not actually read into the standard enough to be able to
Mhm.
answer that question, but that's the part we would look into, because there is definitely differences, especially in the state of California,
Right.
on delineating between sick leave and when you can pay time off. So, and I have to look at that in the governmental world. But I was just saying that I know that there used to be, there was, at one point, the district didn't have a cap on sick leave. And so we accrued, it was this big number, and then a cap got put on, and that those standards allowed for you to do that. I'm not sure. I think that this standard's gonna be bringing some of those liabilities back on the books. So if you have a policy that's just, if we don't pay at termination, you're still gonna probably have to accrue the sick leave that potentially could get paid out. It's like everything they've been doing, OPEB, pension, all these things, is to try to bring the liabilities back onto the books to properly reflect what the government agencies really have out there as a liability, and not just have it be as a, as you incur the costs, actually then show the expense.
Got
Going
it.
to accrue for it.
Thank you for your help.
I had a question.
Yes.
Just on these new requirements, does that mean new accounting work that needs to be done, or is it information we already collect, but we just don't record it the way you need to have it recorded?
Probably a little bit of both. Like I said, I haven't looked into it, so that's when we'll have to actually read the standard, go through the implementation guidance, and determine if it's just an account. It might just be a flip of a switch, because they track the sick leave already. I mean, we know what it is, but it's just maybe how it gets recorded on the books.
Do we have any other questions? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I just want to, again, thank Nishal and his department and the general manager for all their cooperation in an audit. It's not easy. This was Nishal's first year without Suresh as helping him. So it was quite the task to go through a report of this size. The statistical section has, 10 years worth of data. So there's quite a bit to update on these reports. So we want to just thank him for his cooperation.
I just had one other comment.
Yeah.
Right, just one other comment, not on this necessarily, but the fact that public agencies require this kind of analysis of its financial system. And it's a transparency component of what public agencies do. And I just think it's worth acknowledging that. That's all.
Thank you so much. Okay, now we're going back.
Madam Chair, you want to bring this out for public comment?
Yes. Would anybody from the public like to comment? Nobody in the room? And we don't know if our system's working.
Is there a motion to accept, or does there?
This is agendized to receive, so you can make a motion, but it's not necessary.
Okay.
Well, this is on need action. So you should take action,
I'm not taking action.
Oh. I suggest that we move to receive the report.
Is there a second?
You move to receive, okay, I'll second it. Moving on.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And to any attendees who are attempting to use a phone instead of Zoom, it's *9 to raise your hand.
Chair Anderson, I do see a raised hand.
Okay.
And caller ending in 788. You may go ahead.
Hi, it's Michael, and I will defer until you finish this order of business and get my comments from the previous agenda items, if that's okay with you.
Sheriff, why don't we take him out? He may not be able to come back on.
Yeah, Michael, let's go now because we don't know.
Quiet they are in a spot.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
No,
so it's good.
yeah. Are you done with your agenda item on the budget?
Yes.
Okay. So actually, the two times I tried to call, I had the exact same question. So, and it may seem insignificant, but here we are. So I went to the trouble. When the PUC asked, claimed they were going to use another 6-month extension before they rendered a decision on what I understand is the supply demand, did they give any reason whatsoever? Because it's my understanding that there were briefings and hearings and all the information collected over a pretty long period of time, which was all completed maybe a year ago now. And I'm just aghast that they would just say, well, we need 6 more months without any explanation at all. So that was my one question. And then going back to the first time I tried to make comment, I also wanted to attempt to respond to Tom Raleigh for 30 seconds or less on his comments, where he said that, the business community, the ratepayers, whoever he's representing, said that they would support lifting of the CDO provided there was a desal plant as part of the deal. And my question to Tom, and maybe the rest of you should be asking him or whatever, in thinking about this issue, is shouldn't we all be on the same page about lifting the CDO no matter what side we are on the desal? Isn't the idea to get water so that people with lots of record can start building houses, so that businesses can start opening? What difference does it make if we can get the CDO lifted and the moratorium lifted? That should be everybody's prime effort, and we can all join on that one thing because everybody in the community wants that. And to hold out and put conditions on it is, I wrote, is bullying with churlish constraints. And you should look at that, Tom, and get on board, and let's all get rid of the CDO together. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Bear.
Chair Henderson, I see no other raised hands.
Okay. So we are now at item 9.
8.
Oh, 8? Wait a minute.
Yes, item 8.
Wait a minute.
Board reports.
What page is that on? What are you on? Item 8?
Madam Chair, this is just oral reports for activities by the directors.
Oh, excuse me. Okay, here we go. Does anybody have anything to report? Any directors? Briefly, I attended the Pacific Grove City Council meeting where Dave Stoll did his presentation on the water allocation proposal. And the the council members appear to be following, as far as I could tell. But there are two now, there are 2 new ones that haven't heard the presentation, and there'll be a third one when the vacancy there is filled. So I don't know if maybe time permitting, maybe could offer to do it for the new council members. Just a thought. Thank you.
Chair.
Yes.
Just the report, I attended the Seaside City Council meeting with General Manager Dave Stokes. He did an excellent job explaining the allocation process. So I appreciate that. I also attended the State Land Commission public outreach. They had 2 sessions. They did one on environment, and then they did a session on environmental justice. And they were both well attended. One thing I like to say is just being there, didn't speak, but heard them. It brings up a whole lot to hear Marina and others talk about the Cal-Am project and environmental justice. Now, I know that's outside of the district boundaries, but it's the Cal-Am project. And we here on the peninsula have to pay for those Cal-Am projects. So we know about the desal project. So, I would just like the board to know and the general manager to know, anytime it's outreach out there, we need to be there and present. We don't have to speak, but just be there so that people know that we care. And I know we care. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment at this time? Let's move to item number 9. January through March 2025 quarterly water supply strategy and budget.
I'm here for public hearing to consider adoption of the quarterly water supply strategy and budget for California American Water. And I'm not John Lear, but playing him on TV. The first step in the process is looking at the precipitation that's forecast in the National Weather Service's long-range forecast. They're still predicting equal chances of above normal or below normal precipitation for not only the Central Coast, but pretty much for the state. Slide, please. The quarterly water budget is developed considering the state Water Resources Control Board orders for Carmel River diversions, the Seaside Groundwater Basin adjudication decision, and District Rule 160 targets, including the 3,376 acre feet of annual diversion from the Carmel River under the cease and desist order. The quarterly water budget group's plan for ASR is to leave stored water in the ground and only produce it when you need to for drought relief or in particularly dry periods. The current storage is at 3,676 acre feet. If in-stream flows are met, the injection can occur as early as this month, December. Concurrently, the same applies for Table 13 diversions. If in-stream flows are met, Cal-Am will be able to divert under their Table 13 water right. The quarterly water budget group looks at Pure Water Monterey operation and for the quarter ahead expects to have the Pure Water Monterey produced from the groundwater basin at the same rate in which it's injected. Next slide, please, Sarah. You're so fast. The water budget assumes that all seaside groundwater basin coastal subarea, which we also refer to as native groundwater, that all of the allocation will be retrieved in the water year. Again, ASR will be stored for use either in the summer or during drought as necessary. With Pure Water Monterey being produced at the same level that it's injected, that will leave the district's operational reserve at its current amount. The water budget we're going to look at on the next slide was developed on December 9th by the quarterly water budget group, which consists of district staff, Cal-Am, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife and National Marine Services, Fisheries Services, and the State Water Resources Control Board Division of Water Rights. Next slide, please. So this is the budget that was recommended by the group. The first grouping of diversion shows diversion from the Carmel Valley Aquifer, the Carmel River, under all the various water rights. And really the only one that's kind of up in the air is ASR diversion. If we don't meet the in-stream flow, those values go to 0. Otherwise, everything else is produced for customer service. The middle grouping of budget items is for the Seaside Groundwater Basin. Coastal subareas is that native groundwater, and you'll see the amount increasing as both demand increases in March and as the need for limiting Carmel River diversions benefits the fish. Phase 1 and 2 ASR recovery, we expect to leave it all on the ground this quarter.
And, excuse me, Sand City, DeSal, and Pure Water Monterey are assumed to be at a flat rate for all 3 months. The bottom grouping shows where that water is used. The first line item is customer service across the peninsula. We have the ASR injection, and table 13, which is kind of separated from customer service, although it is customer service. Its area of use is limited to the Carmel Valley area. Last slide, please, Sarah. So staff requests that the board consider and adopt the proposed water supply strategy and budget for Caliam's main system for the second quarter of water year 2025, which is the January through March of 2025 period. Are there any questions? Yes.
I just have one. Do you know, Maureen, of where we're at with the Sand City desal and solving the production problems that from there? And if you don't know, that's fine. We can find out. I know it's not your primary area.
Yeah, they don't tend to share details like that with us at this point.
Yeah. Okay, good. We'll find out. Any other questions from the board?
No, I just wanted to piggyback on that, Chair. I think that is the second time we asked that question of what's going on with Sand City.
Yep. So last month, it outperformed. It was 28 acre feet. This month, or the previous month, 14 acre feet. And they are expecting to do a shutdown for maintenance. So it's still sporadic. And they, as of yet, do not have the replacement source well permitted. So that's still kind of waiting to get in line at the Division of Drinking Water.
And that been how many years now?
Couple.
More like 3 or 4?
Yeah. Then.
That's what I like to hear.
Yep.
And a couple, 3 or 4.
So we shouldn't count on that in our budget.
Well, as you correctly pointed out, it's carried at 25 acre feet a month. The prior year did nowhere close to that. Even in a good year, it's been tracking somewhere between 180 and 220 acre feet per year, which would not be 25 per month. So, I think at some point we should probably take a look at that in the quarterly water budget strategy. We haven't had the full conversation with the city of Seaside that the rule that implemented the entitlement for the plant set it at nominally 300 acre feet, but we have the ability to modify that entitlement. But because they haven't, until this Marriott project, they hadn't utilized very much of their entitlement water. It hasn't even been a thought. They're still way down under 15 acre feet, I think, of total entitlement usage. So as they start moving up in allocating that entitlement and continue to operate under nameplate capacity, if you will, we'll have to make adjustments. But for the quarterly water budget, we probably should have that conversation.
And that's not Seaside, that's Sand City.
Sand City, did I say Seaside? I
Yeah.
apologize. Yeah, Sand City.
Okay.
On that point, if the Marriott project, I mean, I know it's going to be completed and all that, why would we carry any water out of that project at all? Why don't we zero? I mean, it seems to me we ought to. That's my question.
Yeah,
Will we zero it out at some point? Because
no, if it will produce and it goes into the system, we want to count. This is part of the phase 2 problem we have with the PUC is how much do you count? And Cal-Am's testimony said, oh, only 94 acre feet, because that's how much of the Sand City desal plant was used to offset diversions from the river, and that's all we have access to. But the fact of the matter is, it's a Cal-Am meter with a Cal-Am bill on the demand side. And so you're counting that on the demand side. So you need to add the full benefit of the supply to your overall supply versus demand. And so it's more than 94, but it's less than 300. And we should put a number on it once we know how it's really going to operate. But it's it's been really inconsistent.
And once we know, it's gonna be after it's repaired. Not,
Well, we
in the
just
next-
showed, yeah, so we just showed that it can operate more than 25 and about half of
Yeah.
25, so.
so there's no number.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, where did I leave it? Where are we?
Public comment? Yeah, this is an action.
Okay, yeah, any public comment on the water budget? Did I already ask that?
I see no raised hands.
Okay, thank you.
I move approval.
So,
I'll second.
thank you, Lori. Any other questions? Okay. Let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay.
So Madam Chair, the next one is item 10,
Yeah. I'm trying to get.
and I see that Stephanie Locke has called in, so maybe she's going to attempt to give this presentation. To unmute your phone, it's *6. But if that's not the case, Stephanie, just text me and I'll do it.
Okay, this is,
Hello.
Oh, we can hear you.
All right, great. Thank you. I'm hoping I'm not echoing, am I?
You were.
not now, though.
We'll try it again, Stephanie.
Okay, can we try this again?
That works.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's clear.
All right, so this is the first reading of ordinance number 196. And I'm sorry, I'm hearing myself echoing. So Dave, why don't you just do this?
Okay. It'll go faster this way.
Thanks. Sorry, guys.
So this is a first reading of ordinance number 196, establishing allocations of water from the Pure Water Monterey expansion project. You've heard many of the presentations on the expansion project. Our belief is it is a permanent replacement water supply. It's expected to be finished before the end of calendar year 2025. And this ordinance will allocate a portion of the new supply, which generally speaking is about 1/3 of our calculated 25-year need for each jurisdiction, with the exception of Delray Oaks at 50% and the airport and the service branches at 50% of their surveyed future need. It totals about 371 acre feet of a new allocation. And then the remainder will be part of the district reserve. Factors considered when determining the allocations, we've kind of talked our way through this, but we relied heavily on AMBAG growth rates, using the jobs growth rate as a proxy for non-residential water use and the population growth rate as a proxy for residential water use, with adjustments made for the 6th cycle RENA housing allocation. To better reflect something that you may have misheard earlier, each of the cities had an opportunity to meet with AMBAG and discuss their growth plans, and all 3 hotels were part of that discussion and would be factored into the regional growth forecast. I'll provide some additional information to you at a future meeting about hotel occupancy rates, but we have included hotel occupancy rates, and it's not 70% of the pre-COVID rate, it's 70% as an occupancy rate. So 70% of pre-COVID would be like 70% of 65%, which would be 42% or whatever. It's not that. It's up over 70%. And for the nicer hotels, it's in the 80%. So those kinds of things are reflected in the growth forecast for non-residential water use. As I mentioned, we did a survey of the airport district and the service branches, and we've included a large 50% portion of those. Next slide. This table will change upon final writing of the ordinance. And mostly it's because of the column called existing allocation. We've let the jurisdictions maintain intact their existing allocations, as well as their entitlements, which aren't even covered at all by this ordinance. So City of Sand City, Pebble Beach entitlements, El Paso entitlements, those remain intact, separate from all of this. So we will define the existing allocation for each jurisdiction as of February 28th, and then that's what will get added together and be reported going forward. Next slide. Okay, great. In addition to these jurisdictional allocations, we've amended Rule 31 to require a different monthly allocation report to the board. You'll see this month's allocation report in your packet and the informational items. It's going to be modified going forward. The ordinance did explain the allocation methodology. We'll maintain the unused jurisdictional allocations as of the effective date, which I mentioned, and the effective date will be March 1st, hence the February 28th rewrite of that one column. And then we can review more frequently, but we will view no less than every 4 years with a new regional growth forecast out. In preparing the public for this, we did meet with all the jurisdictions, as we've talked about, with the exception of the City of Carmel, who was not ready to have a presentation. And the Department of Defense and Coast Guard declined the need for a presentation. And the Water Demand Committee reviewed this in early December and recommended the ordinance to the board. With regard to CEQA, we hired a consulting firm, Rincon Consultants, to first apprise you on whether it was a project under CEQA. It was deemed to be a project. The approach was on how to approach this was defined in a technical memorandum to the board. The board authorized an addendum to the existing Pure Water Monterey EIR, which covered supply and demand issues for the addition of the expansion. And based on those findings, the board adopted the addendum in February. This is the public hearing for the first reading, and we recommend that the board move ordinance number 196 to a second reading and consideration of adoption in the January meeting with the following amendment. And this was at the direction of Fran Farina with the law firm, Michael's law firm, to delete the sentence in section 4 that currently says future allocation of water may occur by resolution of the board of directors. She wanted to make it a much more difficult process than just having a board resolution. In other words, we've kind of promised all the jurisdictions if they see a need for a new allocation that they need to come to us, and then we'll include all of the jurisdictions in another process so that no voice is left unheard, and it's not just first come, first serve. And Fran thought that an amended ordinance or a new ordinance to do that would be the more appropriate, all-inclusive approach.
So will we see that? Should we just wait until next meeting?
It'll be
to
in the
adopt this?
second reading. That's
Okay.
the only edit. And then if over the course of the next several weeks, we receive any public comment that have merit, then we will highlight those in the staff note for the second reading. And if they're significantly substantive, then we could go to yet a third reading before implementation if you felt that was necessary.
Do we have to publish our ordinances in the public document, public paper? Do have
No,
to
we
do
don't.
that?
Yeah,
Cities often do, but we
Yeah,
don't.
we don't publish.
Second question.
Yes.
Are you gonna try to inform Carmel sometime next year?
That was my offer. I mean, their city manager said, "Oh, you should wait for our new city council." I said, "Well, we're trying to write an ordinance." But if they see the need, just like to Director Paul's point about 3 new city council members at the city of PG, if they want to hear it, we will.
Well, I think they ought to hear it, and I
Yeah.
think they ought to understand the dynamic of how this thing developed and where we stand in relation to the authority to do it, but also the flexibility that we have. And I mean, they ought to have that information. I just hope you reach out to them. Not wait for them necessarily, but remind them.
Yeah, and I'll be truthful. I think I've told every city, part of the reason we came to them is so they understand that there's methodology behind this. It's, it's a lot more complex than perhaps we said to the city council, but it's not like we're just winging it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know PG does Zoom meetings. And if they wanted to hear the general manager, just find out what Zoom meeting he was on, and they can play it. And if they have any questions, they can call him up. But I know PG takes their Zoom meetings, and, because I watch them, and I know he does the presentation.
That's a good point. And the PowerPoint is
Yes,
available too.
yes, and the PowerPoint is available.
Carmel
Let
requires
them
that you
know.
bring your dog.
Yeah, well, I never see Carmel on TV, so that's my question. But if we open up the questions through the chair, GM, Mr. Riley mentioned something about double counting, or you're not counting items that this allocation is going to be about. This allocation is so much, and then so we can reserve some water for future needs. So could you answer his question that he was putting out there?
Yeah, and I touched on that briefly. He put 2 assertions out there. One is that, we've missed all the pent up things like 3 new hotels and so forth. Absolutely included that. Every city that talked to AMBAG included those dreams in their discussion. It's a 4-year cycle. There were something like 21 or 23 meetings with the 6 jurisdictions. So if you didn't bring it up, shame on you as a city. But of course they brought it up. There is some dissent, say, between City of Monterey and AMBAG over double counting of the jobs numbers. But from our standpoint, if you've double counted and it's in there, then we've overstated the water need, not understated it. So it's not as if that's pent up. But the other one was hotel occupancy rates. And there has been a rebound since COVID. And, there was initially that what people call revenge travel. There was really high occupancy rates. Then it dropped back down. But we're seeing it, we were in discussion with the Coastal Commission over the American Tin Cannery project. We've been involved with C Monterey, the convention visitors bureau, and we're following all of that. And the band is, between 70% and 80%. You haven't seen a significant drop off below 70%. And that's fairly normal for pre-COVID. So, but I'll bring some of that data back to you just so that you're confident that it's there. But we can't say that every planned future development was covered by AMBAG, or that every city planner who met with an AMBAG representative articulated it well, or that the AMBAG folks translated it well. But we're only as good as the econometrics behind their model in terms of growth rates. But as I said, if they didn't cover it, it's not like you just thought of a hotel overnight. You've had that on your wish list for 2 years, and they've had these discussions with them the last 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, as this is a public hearing, I recommend going out to public comment now, closing public comment, and then you can continue your discussions with staff and amongst the board.
Well, I got some questions first. There's two things I want to thank General Manager Stoltz and his team for coming out to all the cities and other organizations and giving an excellent presentation of methodology and how we got to where we got. But I do believe it was, the presentation said one thing, but the ordinances are saying a little something, so maybe they were adjusted after those presentations. And then I would just mention that, for example, if you're saying now that they may have double counted the jobs for Monterey, but then are we giving them more water than what they deserve? Right? That would be a question I would have. I mean, you just can't just say, not that you're saying it, I'm just saying, right, people are saying it. So we either needs to be true or not, because the other jurisdictions would probably like a little bit more water. If some other jurisdictions get more than what they can justify. And then, for example, I think you said we want to adjust the ordinance to say that that it's not first come, first serve. It's some other type of mechanism. So the whole board here looks at that conversation, which I appreciate and understand. But last time we talked about it, it was first come, first serve, first one justified need, right? I'm not just saying just because you're in line. If you need it, you're supposed to be able to come and get it in line. And everyone knows you're in line. So I support that concept. But it's not, if you need it and you're the first one in line and then everybody else comes up there. So I just don't understand why that ordinance need to be adjusted, but I don't have too many problems with that. I do have a concern where for the city of Seaside, and we'll have one of our representatives come up there, but it says in there, a new thing is that water will not be sold, right? And so that's a little far afield. I think that's more of a land use talk about concern. Like for us, we were not selling land, but we was using the water, not selling land. We were not selling water. We was using water as an incentive for our ADUs. If you keep them affordable, but then this water may not cost you as much as you normally would. And, some of those people pay the cost, but we would like to be able to have that grandfathered in, not this new allocation, but what we already done. So we're concerned that if we adopt it this way, how did that speak to what we have already done in the past? So I'm asking the board to look at that and think about that, because we don't want to go redo those agreements and virtually pull the rug from underneath those homeowners, property owners that built ADUs with that agreement as it relates to water. Just two concerns.
Can we pause? Because that's something new that we haven't really heard. So I think we'll need to better understand, because we were told that none of the cities nor the county had charged for water. And we, large scale projects, we actually have discounts on our fees related to affordability and so forth. But that's just one. And would it be Andy or?
Andy would, that's why I would ask
Yeah.
that the board and the general manager just take a look at that and have that discussion between here and the second reading. So we're not.
Yeah, because we tried to step very clear about saying you can use it this way, or that way. That's land use, true land use. But we didn't want to have a city start charging for what should be a free resource. I mean, it's health and safety.
Well, yeah, we believe it is.
Yep.
Free. So
the other item, so it is still first come, first heard. Let's put it that way. So the first city that says we're coming up on our allocation, they just force everybody in the room so we can go, well, how are you doing? Or how are you doing? And then when they say, well, we haven't used any of our water yet, and say, well, get ready, because you're not going to get a new allocation in this round or something like that. But the city of Monterey expressed concerns that it shouldn't just be the first one gets taken care of and no one hears about it type of thing. So we wanted to make sure that everybody gets a spot check. And also sees that maybe others are more committed to their growth than themselves. So we understand that one. The other one, I'm not sure we understand. So we'll have staff talk.
Okay.
Well, isn't it, the permit that's issued by the city is the determinant about whether that water has been allocated? I mean, a piece of their allocation has been used, committed.
Yep. It's
And that's a very formal process, very specific, and would be known.
yeah, it's iterative. So a developer comes in, the experienced developers know how to count water typically. They go to the city and they say, I'm going to want to pull a building permit. Will you release water in this amount so I can go over to the water district and get a water permit? And then we check their work and we say, no, it's spot on, or you actually got too much water from your city. Let's adjust it backwards, or you're half an acre foot short. But anyway, here's the number. And then they go back to the city and they're issued their building permit. That's the way it's supposed to work. There's been a few things that have slipped through, but that's generally how it does work. And so it's hand in glove with the building permit process. And so when I went to the county, in the spirit of Christmas, I said, we're here to give you water so you can start issuing building permits. And it kind of turned a little bit to discussion about the viability of source waters and the availability of supply, which is a different topic, but they're linked.
Fair enough. It's an iterative process. It changes as the facts on the ground change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just to clarify to everybody, this is the portion of the water of the expansion that's coming on, and we're gonna have, what, 5, 10, 15 years of water left, unless something happens, or?
Well, this is the beauty of it. If everything would line up and if we would get the community support to lift the cease and desist order, this is a small component, 371 acre feet of a potential, 2,000 acre feet. So it's a very small component, which also allows us to make course adjustments. If Seaside as an example, but it's early enough that if Monterey's job numbers were double counted, it's not going to matter in the second allocation or the third allocation or even the fourth allocation. But yeah, it's just to get started. So if we can, get this water in their hands, lift the CDO, lift the moratorium, and then say, have at it. Then you're going to learn, how fast this community really can grow, and all the answers that, all the conjectures that we hear from everyone who says, well, if water were only freely available, we'd build this or we'd build that. Well, that's what you want them to do.
Or we'll find out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and that's a good point, because I'm not trying to prolong this, but you can come in here and put a permit and hold it for 10 or 15 years, and I don't see nothing, but I'm gonna build it. I hope we're looking at more of like Seaside came in, wanted to put their housing project up. They paid for the permit, they did all the work, and now I see a lot full of, apartments and stuff. So I'm not gonna be up here, but I hope the board look at that, and then everybody coming in and filling out, well, I wanna get a bunch of permits, and now I need another water source to come into play.
Well, and in fact, that's what you want to be able to do. If we grow to the point where you say pure water's 70% gone, it's time to build that desal plant. We'll be the next one in line if that's the most viable next project. But I have my suspicions that are probably more like Director Riley's suspicions. It's like, we'll see.
And those, the chair, those are suspicions, right? And so what I'm saying is, if we don't want other people to have theirs, then we shouldn't be dealing in ours. But the facts are the facts. If they come up and they use this water properly, and it's gone, and we get the next allocation, and then eventually it's all gone, and then we talk about desal, right?
Well, hopefully you talk about decel before it's all gone, but yeah.
No,
But you're right. You're thinking about it exactly right.
You know, because the cities need that water, and they need the allocations for developers to come in and whether it's housing or economic development. They need to see that they can come in and have water, and sometimes it takes 5 to 6 years to build,
Well, I understand that. I live in Seaside.
Somebody's, jumping in the middle and suing you, right? Whether you're building housing, affordable housing, workforce housing, or some type of, some type of business, people sue you, right? And so we have to take that into consideration. Well, yeah, somebody will hold on to that water for 5 or 6 years, but our cities are supposed, do we want cities to say, well, no, there's no more water, so don't even come over here for your project? And that project may just be an ADU or that second bathroom, lots of work. All that is in there, and so, cities can't say, well, we want to do the hotel, we want to do a multi-family housing unit, which we supposed to build it, because it takes 7 years, and now, where the water's gone, or we can't issue it out for someone's second bathroom. So I support the ordinance. I just have my 2 or 3 thoughts on that, and well done. I think this is the bridge that we should talk about, it being the bridge. If we want people to support this, then the CEO, then let's concentrate on this being the bridge, and not get bogged down with what's on the other side of the bridge. Let's issue the water, talk about the bridge, and see if we can get people to support that. Then, give them the fess up, right? But they're not willing to walk on the bridge with us, then that's something they're saying. But we shouldn't. Let me, just one more thing, Chair. Did you mention the 37 years? That should be part of this here. Is that part of it though?
Well, it's not a finding. And I think because there's still, even the phase 2 proceeding on supply and demand, it's.
No, I got you, Jerry.
Yeah.
Just right now, it's not appropriate. I'm just.
Yeah.
Okay. Any public comment on this one?
Madam Chair, members of the board, good evening. My name is R. Ashdarian. I'm the general manager of the Monterey County Water Resources Agency. In its simplest form, I'm here this evening to express our concerns over the characterization of this supply as permanent. Before I get into that, first I'd like to take a minute, however, and recognize the great success that Pure Water Monterey has been and the unique collaboration that makes it work. From CalAm delivering the water, from your agency managing the supply, from Monterey One Water treating it for potable use, and of course, from the Water Resources Agency making it available for use on the peninsula. Keystone to the success of this project is an agreement between the agency and Monterey One Water, and fundamental to that agreement is the shared goal of improving water management in Monterey County. Foundational to being able to establish the objectives of that goal is the shared understanding that much of the water made available by the agency for Pure Water is on a when and if available basis. One portion of the water made available to Pure Water, a supply that is literally referred to as interruptible, is subject to fluctuations due to drought, changes in grower behavior, and the potential for a more restrictive regulatory environment. Another portion has greater stability, but is subject to change for the purpose of protecting the groundwater basin in northwestern Monterey County. In 2014, the state passed the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which mandates that groundwater basins throughout the state achieve sustainability by at least 2040. This is where our cautionary tale begins. The area north of Marina to Moss Landing and east to Salinas must achieve sustainability within 15 years to preserve access for the families, farms, and communities dependent upon that groundwater basin. Because of this, some water historically available for use by Pure Water will be repurposed, as envisioned in the agreement, for the protection of this essential natural resource. While we at the agency would take a more conservative approach at this stage, we recognize the authority of the Water Management District to allocate this anticipated supply. And we agree with its measured approach to withhold a portion for a factor of safety, to only allocate approximately 1/3 of the remaining supply, and to reevaluate circumstances in 5 years. My message is more to the jurisdictions that may receive an allocation, including the county. Please be thoughtful about how you put a variable, interruptible supply to use and avoid making permanent commitments in the face of current uncertainties. 5 years from now, we'll have a much greater understanding of how Pure Water Monterey's expansion is operating, its demonstrated reliability, and the real potential for change in the face of Sigma. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Good evening again. Tom Raleigh speaking as a private citizen who lives in Monterey. I first moved here in 1968 and lived through a lot since I moved back here in 1981. And I think this, again, and I mentioned this the last time you brought this up several months ago, this is premature. You're talking about this water that you're listing here is going to be given out to existing permit people. It's not new permits. So, you know, you're not really making a big dent where we need it. Now, if you get the CDO lifted, that's a different story. But basically, you're doing it to ADUs or existing people where water would be used. So the thing is, the timing of this is really, Mr. Stolt, he's beating the guns. He want to get the CDO listed. I think he's dreaming. I think you're going to be surprised. You're going to be told by the State Water Resources Control Board next June or whatever it was, they want to put it off. And they, who knows? They've got their own methods. But the thing is, I think this is premature. And I think you should put this whole thing off until next summer when you're just about to have this thing become active and take a look at this and see how it's going to affect you. This is way building up people's hopes that water's going to be available. And it's really not going to help that much as far as new permits are concerned till the CDO is actually lifted. Thank you.
My name is Nina Beatty, resident of Monterey and a CalAm customer. The Monterey One project is an experiment on the public. This treated sewage and wastewater, industrial ag wastewater, is then stored in the ground of the Fort Ord Superfund site of the Seaside Basin. Researchers raise questions on recycled water safety anyway, and this is the first to use industrial ag wastewater. This water appears highly unsafe for potable use by Monterey Peninsula residents. The interaction of chemicals causes synergistic reactions, ag pesticides and herbicides with cleaning, disinfecting, and personal care chemicals, antibiotics, heavy metals, surfactants, flame retardants, pharmaceuticals and hormones, viruses and bacteria, hormone disruptors, PFAS, toxins, and plastics. Biological cells and organisms are intensely sensitive to the low doses of substances. Antibiotic resistance and immune system impacts are two possible reactions. There will be long-term and cumulative exposure in a county already high in cancer and other illnesses, and the concentrated remainder to be dumped in the ocean. The worst, this treated sewage and wastewater is injected into the Seaside Basin under the most contaminated portion of the Fort Ord Superfund site, which has never been tested for hundreds of toxic materials and munitions, pesticides, and other chemicals that permeate the ground. In fact, only 10 chemical substances were tested for all of that area at only one sampling site on its perimeter. It's a massive cover-up, and officials bury the science and the facts that were inconvenient to the rush to profit from redevelopment of Superfund land with no health warnings. They ignored the community advisory group and experts who warned them. The Associated Press recently reported on the cancer and illnesses from Fort Ord, which may exceed Camp Lejeune's. But CalAm only does routine water testing that they're required to do everywhere, according to their officials. CalAm's future desal project doesn't fix anything. Coming from water laden with ag herbicides and pesticides, the Fort Ord Superfund plume, and rising radioactive contamination from the Fukushima disaster traveling up the Salinas Valley via saltwater intrusion. The Kuroshio Current has carried 100 to 300 tons of Fukushima contaminated water daily from Japan to the Central Coast for 13 years, with radioactive elements including tritium, radioactive hydrogen, which bonds with oxygen to form radioactive water. Tritium cannot be filtered out, and with the other elements will cause cancer if ingested. MPWMD has no basis for asserting Monterey Monterey One water is safe for distribution due to basin superfund contamination, deficient testing, and immature science on treating sewage waste safely. The public will keep paying the costs, including decreased property values. The evidence shows that this water is not safe to drink, bathe in, inhale the steam of, for children and babies to bathe in, to get mixed with baby formula and coffee, or to water vegetable gardens and plants and trees with. It is such a tragedy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beatty.
Hi, Andy Myrick, City of Seaside. Wanted to just start off by thanking the Water District for coming and giving the presentation to the council the other day. We were able to take a look at this. We just noticed it today. Most of the issues were already brought up by the in that meeting, and the council could address it. Did want to bring up a few things that we didn't hear brought up at that meeting, and the mayor did mention one of them about the section here about there being no sale of water, and just the program that he was referring to is under state law, we're not allowed to require that ADUs be rented at an affordable rate. So the council created a program whereby you pay for the water if you're getting an ADU, but if you do a deed restriction on the ADU, then you don't have to pay that fee. So it's not about, jurisdictions trying to, sell the water to the highest bidder or maximize revenue. It's about using that as a tool to incentivize certain behaviors from the applicants. And it would be nice if we could at least have the option to create that kind of a program in the future. The other item I wanted to mention is in section 4, and you did mention that sentence earlier, but being in section 4 about and saying it should be ordinance, not resolution. I don't see that sentence in here one way or the other. I did have a question because it says each jurisdiction should limit the release of water from its allocation to projects that will not be completed before December 31st, 2025, until Pure Water Monterey expansion has received its final approval from the city of Marina. I don't know what that means. And I would appreciate some clarification. Also kind of wondering what happens if we allocate water and the project is under construction and December 31st, 2025 rolls around, what happens? What does it mean by limit the release of water? Just would really like some clarification on that. And you mentioned that there are going to be some changes between first, second, third reading, and I would just invite that if your staff would like to go over this, we're happy to have conversations. Your staff is always very responsive and professional, and I feel like we've got a good working relationship. So if you're looking at changes to this, we're more than happy to talk to you. I mean, so far we had the chance to talk in the September meeting, and there was the council presentation, but we can do more informal things if that would work. And I'm going to get away before this thing yells at me.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers?
Chair Anderson, I do have 2 persons by Zoom.
Okay.
Caller ending in 290, you may go ahead.
Do they need to press?
Can you hear,
There we go.
can you hear us? Can you hear us? All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Jeff Davy, and I'm the chair of the Coalition of Monterey of the Peninsula Businesses. We are and always have been and continue to be in support of a long-term water supply solution for the peninsula, water supply problem, and lifting of the CDO. I am pleased to see that you're moving forward with an ordinance number 196 to allocate water from the Pure Water expansion to the jurisdictions. Way to go. The concern I have is why in this ordinance you indicate without any conditions that the expansion is a permanent replacement water supply that will enable the lifting of the CDO. That simply is not an accurate statement. To imply that the expansion will result in the lifting of the CDO is inaccurate. At a special water forum held in July of this year, in which key leaders of the community attended, a Mr. Ekdahl from the State Water Resource Control Board told everyone who attended the process to lift the CDO and how difficult it would be and what would be required. To simply state the expansion will allow it is very misleading. I want to take the term that Board Member Riley used earlier in the meeting tonight and say he mentioned something was a phony message. I believe the term better applies here. The implication that the expansion will result in a permanent water supply and lift the CDO is a good example of a phony message. The coalition's position and that of the business community, which we have articulated recently in writing, is that we support any lifting of the CDO as long as doing so does not negatively impact the progress of the desal plan. It's simple and very reasonable. I don't know why the business community is being pitted against you. The business community, including the coalition and organizations like the Hospitality Association, Chamber of Commerce, simply wants the district to solve the water problem. A problem that goes back to long before 1980s when you were formed for that purpose. The business community supports the Pure Water project. The business community supports the expansion. The business community supports the desal. For some reason, because the district no longer supports the desal plant, the business community still does, we're being referred to as in conflict. I do not believe that's a fair way to categorize our relationship at all. We all want to solve the long-term water supply problem, right? Finally, the business community is aware of the cost of desal. What you are forgetting is to know what is the cost of not having desal. The burden is far worse and will continue to force this community to live in water poverty. Why can't we work together to support a permanent water supply solution we need so we can lift the CDO? The three-legged stool does just that: water storage, water reclamation, and desal. Thank you for your time.
Melody, if you're ready.
Can you actually hear me this time?
Yes.
Oh, great. It worked. I wasn't sure. So I was at that state meeting that Jeff Davey was just referring to, and I publicly asked the question whether the State Water Board considered Pure Water Monterey to be a permanent new water supply. And they said, yes, we do. So, whatever's going on in people's heads, it's considered a permanent new water supply by the state board. I don't know why the CDO is being conflated with the desal. They're separate issues entirely. I mean, I would hope the business community wants the CDO lifted. If not, I guess you guys have become the no-growthers because everybody needs this water. What does the desal have to do with it? You can't guarantee anything about the desal, but Pure Water Monterey is going to come online. The expansion is going to give us the water we need, lift the CDO. We're not sure how the state's going to respond to this. It's not doomsday here. They seemed very positive to me. I talked to them afterwards. I don't know that that's going to be a big, horrible lift. I mean, there's 3 years of not overdrafting the river, as Dave said. If you're not doing the crime, why are we still doing the time? Everybody needs to get on board with lifting the CDO and not putting conditions about the desal connected with it. That's Cal-Am's number. That's what they told the State Water Board at the very end of the meeting. They were asked, well, would you lift the CDO? Well, only if you stop the lawsuit and support the desal. Well, it doesn't have anything to do with the desal. This is water. We need it. I'm just tired of all this nonsense of trying to put the two together. If the desal happens, it'll happen, but this water is real. Desal is a dream. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Melody.
Ms. Melton, if you're ready, you may address the board.
Yes, this is Marley Melton.
I didn't see anything in there about any mention of affordable housing, and I realize it's not the water management district's problem. But so far, the projects that had been mentioned were 3 big new hotels when we desperately need housing for the people who work in those hotels. And also for teachers and a lot of other crucial members of the workforce that make our county prosperous. So I would just like to, in a way, I think the closest thing we heard was Seaside's using the water to encourage making units more affordable. If that is in some way practical, I would encourage people to consider really trying to encourage the building of workforce housing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Anderson, I see no other raised hands.
Thank you, Sarah. All right.
Chair, if I may,
Sure.
General Manager, can you answer some of those questions that have been thrown out there?
Well, to the housing issue, again, we couldn't memorialize a preference or a categorical type of use because that's land use planning. But when we started this process, we said we're going to base it on locally approved draft housing elements. And then ultimately, I would assume a state HCD accepted housing elements. So we wanted to be comfortable that we were reviewing the housing elements, and every single housing element has a very affordable and affordable allocation of housing. So I think we're confident that it's there, but it's up to the jurisdictions to prioritize. So we hope they do. We hope they find a way to build it because it's very challenging to build at least 100% affordable, very challenging. So I think, we've done everything we can do as a water agency on that usage issue. The other items raised, we're going to sit down and talk with Andy representing the city of Seaside on his 3 issues. I think 2 of them are non-issues, and the third one we just need to understand better. But we'll set something up there.
Okay, and how long we been using recycled water?
Yeah.
It's in a basin. I know it's in a basin.
Yes.
So
since 2020, we have been injecting. And we are subject to approvals by the Division of Drinking Water with respect to travel time, water quality. We're also subject to regional board discharge permits. It's very heavily regulated. And we're compliant with all the regulations. So if the regulations aren't satisfactory to a customer, there's not much we can do to affect that, but it's very heavily regulated.
okay. That's all I got for right now. Somebody else can.
Chair, I just want to clarify a couple things. Well, I'm going to the point out, I know who raised it, but we used the some big hotels as a metaphor for economic development. So that water can either be used, I'm talking about from the city's perspective, or a hotel, a small coffee shop, a pizza shop, ice cream shop, and of course, housing. The focus of the cities is not big hotels. That was just somebody's metaphor of that amount of water. But I know the cities have affordable housing, workforce housing up front and center for their water allocation. It's not just big hotels. Someone just used that as a metaphor for a lot of water. But that water could easily go to, again, a small coffee shop.
Yes.
Maybe I'm out of my element. But for the moment, Nina, I mean, I appreciate all the potential contaminants that may exist out there, but we're still trapped by the state law and the state standards and whatever the enforcement responsibility is at the state on all public agencies, all public water, I mean, all water suppliers. And so those standards apply across the board, across the state. And I'm not sure how we could ever consider separate, more stringent, standards to follow. I hear you, and I just want to acknowledge that we still have standards we have to go by. regardless.
One more through the chair, Jim, what the county was saying, would that affect us?
Yeah, it could. We've talked a lot about business risk. He spoke to two different types of water, one where you've got kind of, it's interruptible, but you've got the quiet enjoyment of it if they can't use it. And that's been going on for 26 years, 27 years. And that would be, for example, winter wastewater. If the growers could afford storage, they could take more of that winter wastewater and hold it. But it's also ostensibly raining, so you don't need to irrigate in the winter. So you would need storage to carry it forward to the summer. Other water that might be Blanco drain or reclamation ditch or pond number 3 at the Salinas industrial wastewater facility. Most of those are subject to contract. There's a difference of opinion whether, let's say, a water right from the Blanco drain was limited by the agreement, the amended and restated water recycling agreement between Water Resources and Monterey One Water. There are different views as to what the legal contractual obligations are. All I know is that the question's been asked and Monterey One's had to answer it multiple times. And, they've trotted out hours of attorneys' work on reviewing the different sources. And we have to be able to rely on them. I mean, it's a great relationship because it's like, Paul, if you're wrong, I'm going to sue you. And, so there's an incentive to be right. And there's financial penalties for being wrong under the contract. So neither of our agencies entered into a contract lightly saying, hey, let's go into default in the first year, or, let's go into default by the 10th year. But, there's all sorts of things that could happen. I've had conversation with, let's just say, ag interests further down the valley who've said, well, we should just blow up that agreement on water recycling and start from scratch. I was like, we could do that. And I'm pretty sure the city of Seaside will join us with the city of Monterey and everyone else saying, well, that's such an important part of our domestic water supply. Now we're taking all our wastewater back from CSIP. Let's start over, So it's just, there's not a good solution. I did tell the supervisor, one of the supervisors on my meeting on December 4th, that the risk of growers treating their water on site for reuse, if the ag waiver is lost, is not really about irrigation, it's about discharge. And the easiest fix would be for us, a urban water agency, to come in and say, we'll collect all your discharge from all your tile drains and we'll send it back to this one spot where it's currently diverted and still send it to the plant. And those growers are much more likely to say, I like the cost of you paying for it more than the cost of me having to pay for it and treat it with a bead ion technology or something that's really kind of, very expensive and over the top. And to another supervisor who said, well, you know, we may need this water to address our Sigma issues. And I said, your Sigma issues are 7 to 10 times bigger than any amount of water that you could even identify as having sourced from the valley to Pure Water Monterey. And so you could take all that water and you're not going to solve your problem. Your problem is too big for Pure Water Monterey expansion or Pure Water Monterey base project to solve. And the answer to that was, well, when you're trying to fill a bucket, every drop counts. To me, that's not a compelling argument. If you can't solve 95% of your problem with this water, why exert so much effort on focusing on this water? So, but there's so much out there left to happen. And, you know, Sigma did change the playing field. So since 2017, you can't say that the past is an indicator of the future, but the past in the valley has been defer, delay, discuss, but not finance. So.
Okay, Mr. Laredo, using the word permanent, do that affect this ordinance in any way? Permanent water supply. That don't mean we can't look at something in the future. Help me with that, because people think this using permanent keep us from looking at desal or anything else.
No, it doesn't. No, it does not. The word permanent, it does not preclude the district from seeking other water sources or continuing its efforts to create additional water sources. We did, Fran in my office did work really closely with Stephanie Locke on this ordinance, and we're very happy with the language that's included.
Okay. That's all I got.
Through the chair, I thought that was a good point about putting it on the record of this discussion, that this doesn't preclude a desalinization plant, and that's not what we're saying, right, as we adopt this. I want to go back to what you said earlier, Jim, about Monterey One Water, right, and their abilities to work with us, and we stand on their numbers of the water coming in. But isn't the state doing the same thing? I mean, hasn't this been passed and looked over as the state, and they're comfortable with Monterey One Water saying that they believe this water will come in?
Well, the short answer is yes. The longer answer is yes, up through the base project. There's an engineering report that's currently under review that will lead to the expansion permit from the regional board. So we're assuming they'll get to yes on that.
Well, but at first blush, they don't believe this is, you know, we can say interruptible, right? But they don't believe that the interruption is anytime soon.
Right.
Right. You know, otherwise they would have just, what are you guys talking about? This can go anytime.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Go ahead, Mary. Thank you. As I mentioned, when you were giving your report, which your presentation at the board meeting, which I thought you know, was really good. And it frustrates me listening to some of my colleagues. There's no question about it. I have been hawking a regional solution to water, you know, that would be countywide for so long. I'm even getting tired of it. But one of the things that I said then that I say here again is I think we will have to have desal. I have no question in my mind that we would, but I do not think that we need this behemoth overpriced monstrosity that seems to have a $200 million life of its own at this point. I believe, it still saddens me that the plan that we had some years ago, you know, was really a solution, an elegant solution. And it was, you know, politics and dirty tricks and everything else that, you know, took that out of the possibility of existence. So to me, you know, as we continue to work with Pure Water Monterey and the expansion, I believe in it so completely. And I believe that the amount of time that we have with it would give us time to pull back and regroup and see if we can't look to having a desal plant that would serve both the Salinas Valley and the concerns that they have, and the Monterey Peninsula and the concerns that we have. I'm not gonna ever leave, let go of that dream, because I think it's the solution. So thanks again for the presentation, and I'm just so sorry that we can't move forward together in a way that would be really just plain old good sense and more cost effective. That's it.
And she didn't say, but she was one of the 2 supervisors who went straight to housing, which is, why are we having this discussion? We need housing. And to get housing, you need water.
Well, I will add my one comment to this discussion about desal, and we probably will need it. I agree with Mary about that. But I also think that how many years have gone past since the desal plant was designed? And I think there's going to be incredible new technology out there, which is going to make the water cheaper, which is going to make the process more affordable. We'll see. Yeah, more environmentally friendly. There's all kinds of things happening in the development of technology for desal, and we'll keep our ears open. Everybody will.
To the chair, Jim, how long would it take you to look at, if we do the first reading tonight, to see seaside problems and any others that you see coming up for the second reading? We don't have to have the second reading in 30 days, or can we be a little bit longer? Mr. Laredo, you can help out with that one.
Yeah, keep in mind the January meeting, because of Martin Luther King's holiday, is going to be the last Monday of the month. So it's quite a bit more than 30 days from now. It's probably 40 plus. So I think we'll be able to address all the issues that have been raised without significant language changes. So what I've heard tonight is it's worthy of discussion, and just pointing out where certain things are in the ordinance and what they really meant when they were drafted. So I think we'll be fine unless there's some member of the public out there or some other agency who's reading it for the first time and raises an odd, unexpected item.
Okay, Mr. Laredo, you want to comment?
Yeah, just to add further, if General Manager Stoll does run out of time, he can push off the second reading to the next meeting, and he could just provide a verbal update that that's what he's doing. But it sounds like he believes he has plenty of time.
Well, on that note, I'm gonna move approval of the first reading, so we can move along.
I'll offer a second, but with the first, with amendments, as suggested.
Yes, yes, with the amendments that came up, so I move them.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
No, this is a roll call.
I'm
I
sorry.
wanted to stick.
Director Oglesby,
Aye.
Director Adams,
Aye.
Director Lindor,
Aye.
Director Paul,
Aye.
Director Edwards,
Aye.
Vice Chair Riley,
Aye.
Chair Anderson.
Yes.
First reading is adopted 7-0.
Thank you. Okay, so we've done, where are we?
Your elected officers.
Now, we're one in between, so
Number
action item 12.
Yeah, page 177.
So Madam Chair and the board, this one's pretty self-explanatory, but suffice to say, we last authorized money for the Rutan and Tucker Special Counsel firm in December of 2019. And last month, we pretty much ran out. So this is a reauthorization of a portion of their budget. They did give us a budget for the eminent domain proceeding of about 1.2 million. They've only incurred about 40,000. We're in a busy period now, so I would imagine we'll start seeing bigger bills. So this is a request for an additional 250,000.
This is additional to what we originally approve, or this is,
Yes,
okay,
yes. So this will bring their total up to now 450,000 over 4.5 years.
any questions about that?
Yeah, just for clarification, so the estimate of 1.2 million is for the legal work during the eminent domain proceeding.
Yes, just so the filing of the action last December at this time, the demur defense, the potential of the mini bench trial on the activation of powers, all of those things. But it should be over more than a 2-year period. So that's why we've just taken a little bite here. And then when we hit the regular budget cycle in June, we're going to actually ask them, based on where we think we stand in June,
Yeah.
to redo their budget.
But did that 1.2 million estimate anticipate the second phase of the eminent domain proceeding, the evaluation? phase?
Not the jury trial.
Okay. And, and the budget for the consultants is separate, the rate consultants.
We
and
did that
utility
last month.
consultants, yeah.
And in mid-year budget, we're taking only a portion of this budget and a portion of the consultant's budget to just get through the rest of this fiscal year.
Okay, any other questions by the board?
I move approval. Oh, no, I gotta go after the public.
Public comment.
Open comment.
Yeah, do we have any public comment on this?
Chair Anderson, I see no raised hands.
Okay.
They're too tired to raise their
Okay, so we've got
So I'll move approval.
I'll second.
okay, let's take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, okay. Oh, we're at the calendar year meeting schedule. Things are
Yep.
lightening up.
So Sarah included an outlook. We had only scheduled through February of this coming calendar year, so this represents rounding it out and into next year, or 2026.
Anybody have any objections or problems with any of this?
Well, I just want to let you know that I will not be here March 17th. I'm going to be away for a week, March 11th through 18th. I'll be returning late that's Tuesday to Tuesday, so I will not be here that Monday, March.
Okay, that's one Monday.
I could, but Brown Act. doesn't-
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
We can talk about it.
I don't know, yeah.
I'll second it.
Okay, everyone in favor?
Aye.
Any public comment?
Any public comment on our schedule?
Probably not.
I see no raised hands, Chair Anderson.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, that brings us to election of board of officers.
Yeah, we
Oh,
have to
that's
vote
right.
now. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Madam Chair, that brings us to the election of board
Yes.
officers for 2025. But before we do,
Hmm.
we have to extend our appreciation
Oh,
for your 1 year
ouch.
of chair.
For my misreading of the dates and everything. Thank you.
How much is the check?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So in addition to chair and vice chair, we need a board clerk and board secretary.
Uh-huh.
Treasurer.
I'm sorry, not
Treasurer.
board clerk, treasurer and secretary. And so the staff suggestion for treasurer is Nichelle Bali,
Nichelle.
and for secretary, me,
Is you.
which I've always aspired to be a secretary of something. And-
Secretary of State.
And then the normal rotation, of course, would be Director Riley fulfilling the chair and Mayor Oglesby becoming vice chair.
As vice chair, yes, that's the slate. We can all vote for all of them at once.
Can we do that?
Mhm.
I'm moved to slate.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any
Public comment.
public comment? No.
Public is probably tired. I see no raised hands, Chair
Yeah.
Anderson. May I have a repeat of who made the motion in the second, please?
I made the motion. Move 'em on.
You second?
Yes, I seconded.
Thank you.
Sure, Paul. Okay, let's take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Amazing.
Good night.
With
Congratulations.
with that, Director Anderson, the gavel now passes to Chair Riley, and he can close out the meeting.
Seriously, huh? Right now.
Any comments for the benefit of the group?
Inviting heckling.
This meeting is adjourned.
All right, good job.